Roger Moore steps into the tux of James Bond for the 6th time in Octopussy. Released in 1983, Octopussy sees Bond investigate a jewelry smuggling caper involving a rare Fabergé egg, to which he finds himself on an adventure which takes him to the beautiful landscapes of India and Cold War Berlin, where he uncovers a plot involving a hydrogen bomb going off at a circus at a military base, to which along the way we see Bond dress up as a gorilla, crocodile, circus performer, and a clown, while swinging on jungle vines like Tarzan. Yeah, this Bond entry is a bit out there to say the least, where Bond's investigations lead him to the mysterious Octopussy, played by Maud Adams, who runs a cult of jewelry smugglers and circus performers on a remote Indian island, in what is definitely one of the strangest Bond films, which takes a more B-movie approach and kind of feels like the Bond movie's answer to the new Indiana Jones craze of the early 80s. So join with me as we check out one of the most bizarre Bond movies ever. And given how weird the Bond series can be at times, that is saying something. So time to fix up the bow tie and sip on the martinis as we look into 10 things that you didn't know about Octopussy.
You have a nasty habit of surviving.
Well, you know what they say about the fittest?
Number 10. James Brolin was going to play Bond. People often point out Roger Moore's age when it comes to his last few Bond films, and how he just appeared too old for the part, as if Moore couldn't let Bond go and was trying to grip hold of his former youth. However, no one wanted Moore to leave the part more than Moore himself, as originally after filming Moonraker, his 4th Bond film, he said he intended to leave the role, but he was then persuaded back for the next Bond adventure For Your Eyes Only. But after making that film, he made it very clear that he wasn't going to star in any more Bond films. So the crew at EM Productions turned to American actor James Brolin, who at the time starred in movies such as Westworld and The Amityville Horror. Brolin flew to England where he had to get his hair cut like Bond and get physically trained for the role, where he did a series of screen tests, including a fight scene and a love scene. And it's weird watching his tests, what with seeing Bond with an American accent.
Hello, you still there? Well, I had a little trouble with the line.
Things seemed to be going on track for Brolin, till he was let go. Brolin claims that he was removed from playing Bond because he referred to the Bond producer Albert R. Broccoli as the Godfather, and the producer didn't see the funny side of the nickname. However, truth be told, the Bond production went into panic mode when they discovered a rival Bond film starring the legendary Sean Connery was in the works. And let's be honest, if 2 Bond films were out and one was starring Sean Connery and the other was starring James Brolin, which would you go and see? So Moore was once again persuaded back for the part, because only he could fill the shoes when it came to competing against Sean Connery. No matter what you want to say about Roger Moore's time as Bond, what with it being more comical, in contrast to nowadays where Bond has to be all dark and brooding, the fact of the matter is, back in the 70s and 80s, Roger Moore filled cinema seats, and only he could compete with Sean Connery. Number 9. Battle of the Bonds. So in 1983 there was 2 rival Bond movies coming out starring 2 of the biggest Bond actors of that time, with Roger Moore starring in Octopussy and Sean Connery starring in Never Say Never Again. A competition for blockbuster dollars, which the press referred to as Battle of the Bonds.
And folks who are fans of James Bond movies will be able to double their pleasure in a few months.
But this time, Roger's biggest challenge isn't some supervillain from Smersh or Spectre. It's a rival 007, played by Sean Connery,
in which 2 James Bonds were going against each other, despite the fact that in real life Sean Connery and Roger Moore were good friends. Octopussy was released on the 6th of June 1983, and Never Say Never Again was released on the 7th of October. However, Octopussy won the battle as it made $187 million at the box office, as opposed to Never Say Never Again's $160 million. It was a very rare and odd situation to have two competing Bond films.
Well, I don't know whether you're a fan of Sean Connery or Roger Moore, but you're going to have the choice this summer to pick either one.
And the fact that one starred Connery caused anxiety with the official James Bond Ian Productions. Roger Moore would go on to say that he feels that Connery probably agreed to star in Never Say Never Again to spite producer Albert R. Broccoli on the account of the long feud between the actor and producer. Number 8, it bears little resemblance to its original story. Octopussy's main story about a jewelry smuggling caper taking place in India and Berlin involving a hydrogen bomb exploding at an American Navy-based circus is an original story written up specifically for the movie, which isn't rare as at that stage of the franchise's history, many of the Bond films were bearing little resemblance to the original Ian Fleming books. The title Octopussy comes from a short story written by Fleming, which featured in an anthology novel called Octopussy and the Living Daylights, which was published in 1966. The story about Octopussy is basically about Bond tracking down a World War II hero called Major Dexter Smythe, who stole some gold and murdered a mountain guide in the process, where Bond gives the disgraced hero an option: to turn himself in or kill himself. The Octopussy movie actually acts as a sequel to the short story, with it being revealed that the character Octopussy is Smythe's daughter, with the events of the story even being mentioned in the film. Some other elements from the short story Property of a Lady were also featured in the movie version of Octopussy, as Property of a Lady was also a short story in Octopussy and the Living Daylights. In fact, the Fabergé egg in Octopussy was called Property of a Lady, named after the story. Number 7, casting of Octopussy. Octopussy is the only time in the franchise's history where the movie's title itself is named after a Bond girl. So producers had the task of finding the right actress to play the strong and mysterious Octopussy. Howling 2 actress Sybil Danning was announced as the actress who will be playing Octopussy. However, the announcement was incorrect, as producer Broccoli just didn't think she was right for the role. There was some interest to cast Faye Dunaway, but she was too expensive. Barbara Carrera was also offered the role, but she turned it down to play the villain Fatima Blush in the rival Bond film Never Say Never Again, which, to be honest, she was freaking awesome at. And Star Trek the Motion Picture actress, Persis Khambatta, also auditioned, but nothing came of it, until it was decided to cast Maud Adams, who had already appeared as a Bond girl in The Man with the Golden Gun, making a rare occasion where a leading Bond actress plays two different Bond girls. As she got the part because she was working for Eon Productions at the time, helping with the audition process when the crew were looking for Roger Moore's replacement. Number 6, original pre-title sequence. Every Bond fan knows about the awesome and exciting pre-title sequence in which Bond flies in a tiny jet while trying to avoid a heat-seeking missile. The sequence is very well shot and still holds up today, even if you can see the jet attached to a pole in the scene where it's flying for a hangar. However, originally the pre-title sequence was going to feature a motorbike chase taking place on the Isle of Man during a tourist trophy motorcycle race. However, the idea was scrapped, as it was decided to use the mini-jet sequence instead, which apparently was originally written for the Moonraker pre-title sequence. Also, that line at the end of the sequence where Bond drives his jet into a gas station and says,
Fill her up, please.
wasn't in the script, but Moore ad-libbed it, as the scene was just going to end with Bond approaching the gas station. Moore felt that Bond should say something to end the scene with. Ah, yes, and adding the extra dose of Roger Moore charm makes everything that bit more awesome. Number 5, Octopussy was next door neighbours to Superman 3. A huge chunk of Octopussy's interior filming took place at Pinewood Studios in 1982, just as with most other Bond films. However, while Octopussy was being filmed at the studio, Superman 3 was also being filmed at the famous London studio, as you can see here with this photo of Christopher Reeve visiting the set, in which he is still wearing his Superman wig. In fact, I like to think that the cast and crew members were often walking in and out of the two movie sets to say hello and hang out. Also, Superman 3 starred Gavin O'Herlihy as Clark Kent's former high school bully Brad Wilson, who also starred in Never Say Never Again as the ill-fated brother to the main Bond girl. And I wonder if when he was on the set at Pinewood Studios to film Superman 3, if any members of Octopussy's crew approached him to find out some hot gossip about the rival Bond film. I mean, it makes you think. I just can't imagine that if an actor who was also starring in Never Say Never Again was also working at Pinewood during the Octopussy shoot, that there wouldn't have been some kind of interest in knowing what he had to say, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Number 4. Comic book adaptation. So Marvel Comics released a comic book adaptation of Octopussy, and first up, the illustrations are awesome, with each character's likenesses being captured perfectly. However, the main issue I have with the comic is its colouring, which really lets the illustrations down, with random bright colours being used rather than colouring the illustration's details, with single panels focusing on one particular colour, and often the characters look like they have jaundice. I think it would have complemented the overall presentation of the comic had they illustrated it with a variety of colours, rather than focusing on one colour per panel and per character. And often it's hard to tell what's going on, like with this panel, which is meant to be the scene where Bond fights the thug with the saw yo-yo. Still, it's interesting seeing Octopussy in comic book format, so it's worth checking out for that reason alone. Also, what's up with Roger Moore's face here? He looks like a little kid who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Number 3. Movie poster galore. So what with an unofficial Bond movie competing with Octopussy, when it came to the movie's poster, they wanted to make sure that they made it clear that this was the official 13th James Bond movie. As you can see with this teaser poster, which literally has 13 James Bonds, with it being declared, nobody does it better 13 times. A very early poster saw James Bond standing in front of a gold background with some colourful lady silhouettes behind him, with him holding a target board. What's curious about this poster is that it uses the same illustration of Roger Moore used for his first 2 Bond films, Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. And clearly Moore had aged since then. The most common image used to market the film was this illustration of Bond and Octopussy, with Octopussy having many arms around Bond. This illustration is nothing short of superb. There were several variations of the poster made, depicting all kinds of action surrounding Bond and Octopussy. However, the Thai version of this poster is honestly nothing short of a masterpiece. Seriously, look at how epic this looks. In fact, the Octopussy poster is so remarkable, it was even featured on the cover of the James Bond poster book. Number 2. Title controversy. Supposedly, originally Octopussy was going to be called Property of a Lady, named after the Ian Fleming short story which also featured in the book Octopussy and the Living Daylights, with the film being named after the Fabergé egg seen in the film. However, it was decided to call it Octopussy, which left some people a little shaken and stirred, on the account that many people felt the title was just a little bit too rude, even by Bond standards. Roger Moore said that when he was being interviewed about the movie, he was asked what the title was, to which he told the intriguing title to the journalist, who was absolutely shocked and appalled, and replied, "You must be joking." And actress Christina Wayborn, who played villainess turned hero Madga, claims that she put off telling people what the name of the Bond film she was working on was, as she was also a little shocked and embarrassed. The movie's main song was called All Time High, probably because it would have been too awkward to record a song called Octopussy. But regardless, it is what it is, and love it or hate it, the 13th Bond movie became Octopussy. So why do I feel the title was chosen? Well, probably to shock people. Probably to get people talking, draw attention, in order to draw attention away from the rival Bond film Never Say Never Again. Number 1. Accident on set. There is always an element of risk while making a Bond film, and any action movie which requires stunts for that matter. However, Octopussy saw a terrible incident occur while filming, in a scene where we see Bond hanging onto the outside of a train. Roger Moore's stunt double Martin Grace was performing the dangerous stunt, and due to miscommunication, Grace was left holding onto the train a little longer than he should have, to which the train passed a concrete pole which hit Grace, and damaged his thigh and fractured his pelvis. It was a serious injury that shocked everyone involved with the project. Grace said that it happened really fast, but all he could do was hold onto the train for dear life. The event caused a lot of tension on the set, with the movie's production now being tainted with the terrible incident. However, Grace made a full recovery and returned to the set when he was better, and thus we got one of James Bond's most death-defying stunts. I think that Octopussy often falls into lists of worst James Bond movies, and although the movie has issues and isn't exactly a masterpiece with some odd comedic choices, namely dressing Bond as a clown, the movie is still lots of fun. It's a guilty pleasure, and whenever I watch it, it always seems to make me smile. So I say give Octopussy another go. Don't go into it thinking you're going to see one of the best Bond movies ever, or a marvel of filmmaking, but rather you're just going to switch your brain off and have fun with it, in all its weird and bizarre 007 glory. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I don't care how old Roger Moore was back in 1983, he was a gentleman and he was awesome. See ya!